One.
Hello everyone, welcome back to FFG Live. My name is Evan Johnson. I'm joined here today by Marvel Champions designer extraordinaire, Caleb Grace.
Wow, they really upped my title.
Yeah.
Added the extraordinaire.
Yep. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good.
Yeah.
So we're here to announce, as people know, the next scenario pack for Marvel Champions, the card game. And you want to let people in on what that is?
Well, I know we posted up. A lot of people had guesses, so I just want to say I'm really excited that today we are revealing it is, in fact, Howard the Duck.
Quack, quack.
Yes!
No.
Or not really.
Not really. Wah, wah. Okay, so it is, of course, the Once and Future Kang.
Yeah.
As was leaked and people saw. So we're all super excited for
Yep.
Once and Future Kang. You can probably see the box up on your screens right now. So this pack pits you and your fellow heroes against Kang, and it's a fight that's very different from scenarios we've seen in the past
Yep.
for Marvel Champions. But before we get too far into that, let's take a closer look at the villain. Do you want to read off Kang the Conqueror?
Yeah, I got him here. So, Kang the Conqueror is the first villain with a subtitle in parentheses there. That'll come in later. He has, on stage one scheme, 2 attack. He's got the temporal trait, the toughness keyword, and a forced interrupt. When Kang attacks you, either place 1 threat on the main scheme, or he gets +2 ATK for this attack. When defeated, advance the main scheme to stage 2 at the end of the phase.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the scenario, you're all battling against Kang the Conqueror in a fairly standard setup, all the heroes working together to KO the villain. What led you to pick Kang as the next major villain that the heroes would face in a scenario pack?
Yeah, that was a fun process. That's actually one of the funnest parts of the game, designing, right, is going like, well, what should we do next? So right now we have a lot of Avengers heroes that are being released. And also, there's rumors that Kang might feature very soon in the MCU.
There are rumors.
So we just thought, hey, who's a classic Avengers villain who might show up in the MCU and suddenly, be part of the public consciousness? Like, let's see if we can get ahead of this a little bit. And also, in tandem with that, we wanted to come up with a standalone star with a really unique design. And Kang lent himself to that too, which I'm sure we're going to get more into. So yeah, we're just really excited that it was available to us and nabbed him up right away.
Yeah, totally. So once you do defeat Kang's first stage, everything gets shaken up as you advance to the Master of Time scheme. Do you want to read that off?
Yeah. Okay, so right away, astute players probably notice it's weird that defeating a villain advances the scheme.
That seems bad.
Yeah, you would think, but Kang's not your standard villain. He's a time traveler, so to defeat him is going to be different. So Master of Time, stage 2A, says we have some flavor. Kang reels back, but he saves himself by separating the heroes through time and space. That's the thing he does. All right, so when revealed, place 1 acceleration token here for each side scheme in play. Then discard each side scheme. Each player reveals a random Stage 3A in turn order. Remove any unused Stage 3 schemes from the game.
Wow.
So the players are getting split up.
So basically, as cards, each hero reveal their own Stage 3 scheme, and those schemes are going to separate the heroes each into their own play area. Can you tell us a little bit more about how this works and how it mixes things up from a typical game?
Yeah, so in Champions as a co-op game, typically you're all working together. You share the same kind of game area. Each person has their own play area, but there's a common game area where the villain and the encounter deck and the scheme deck, those all reside. And in this scenario, once you defeat Kang the Conqueror, stage 1, then instead of surrendering, he says, no, let's hit the reset button. I'll use time travel hijinks and throw you guys apart. So now the way that works is suddenly your game area becomes your own play area, or sorry, your play area rather becomes your game area, and now we're separated. And so that means that if you're engaged with a minion, I can't help you with that anymore, because you might be in a totally different century or alternate dimension from me.
Right.
So if people played Lord of the Rings, they might remember we did some similar things in the Lord of the Rings card game with like Foundations of Stone, where players were separated from each other and had to work to get back together. And that was a really popular scenario that people really enjoyed. And we saw an opportunity with Kang to do something kind of similar, a little bit of homage, and then kind of some fresh twists on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. One of the they're asking to see the card. Can you throw up the Master of Time scheme, Ryan?
Again,
Which is the sideways card. Yeah, not the Kang Master of Time. It's confusing because Caleb named everything the same thing.
A lot of Kangs, a lot of Masters of Time.
Yeah, there's a lot of time.
What's the name of the card?
It's called the Master of Time. It's a sideways card. It's got a 2A in the upper right corner. Got it. All right. Perfect. So as people are now seeing what we were talking about, so this splits all the heroes apart. What's that experience like? Like having, being one of the few who's like played through this scenario, right? These people haven't played it yet. What's the experience that conveys? How's that?
Well, first of all, it's going to depend on the number of players, of course. If you're playing solo, you're not going to have the experience of being separated from your teammate. But the scenario does present a fun opportunity in that there's a lot of replay value as you choose a random stage 3 each time. So one time you might have to fight Iron Lad, another time you might have to fight Immortus. So it's going to depend on which stage 3 you get. But in a co-op sense, it's fun in that just moments ago we were working together. Maybe we even built our decks together to where like I'm going to play more of a defensive or thwarting role, and you're going to play more of an aggressive, smash the villain in the face kind of role. And so in that sense, we're a really effective team. But suddenly we're separated out, and now I'm still really good at defending and thwarting, but I might be struggling to deal out damage to defeat the villain. And over there, you might be really good at hitting the villain still, but time is running out for it. Can you do it in time before your Kang completes his scheme? So it kind of breaks the players up and forces them to deal with things, kind of one-on-one with the villain, and it creates some really fun team play moments. So although that may sound unintuitive, like they were separated, but it creates fun team play moments where if you are able to defeat your version of Kang at your stage 3, then at the end of the round, you'll be able to choose another player and rejoin them.
So you can be like, all right, Thor needs help over here. Yeah. I need to like fly through the time streams over to help him now.
Yeah, I think the story basically goes: you defeat the Kang you're with, and you're able to commandeer his time travel stuff to go and very very much like the comics, right?
Right.
I love other comics like that. Looks like a time travel machine. I'm sure I don't need training to use it. I'll just hit the button.
Quick sidebar here that I see a question in the chat. Spider-Man 16 is asking if there's an expert option. Do you have to start with Kang the Conqueror stage 1? How does that work?
Oh, expert. Yes, that's actually a great question. I believe we made expert versions of the villains so that there is within the scenario kit, you get your standard mode Kang the Conqueror, and then for expert mode there's just a harder version of stage 1. Right,
so you have your first number 1 Kang the Conqueror, and then you have an iteration of him that you face in stage 2, and then there's a final one that you face when everyone comes back together.
So the scenario is very different in that sense that normally if you're playing standard mode, maybe I misunderstood the question. Normally in a scenario you're playing standard mode, you defeat stage 1 and 2 of the villain.
Right.
But one of the things that's really important to us with Marvel is to make sure that we don't just settle into a rut where we're just, basically giving you different flavors of exactly the same thing every time. We really want to try to branch out and do different things. So in this particular scenario, you actually have to defeat 3 villains. You have to defeat Kang 1, Kang 2, and Kang 3. So Kang 1 is stage 1. Kang 2 is where you're all separated out and you each get your own. And then if you're able to come back together, you will face Kang 3. And then you have to defeat Kang 3 to win ultimately.
Nice. That's super cool. All right, I'm going to read off another version of Kang that they face, which is Scarlet Centurion. So this is one of the versions of Kang that you face during stage 2. He's got 0 scheme, 3 attack, 18 hit points, toughness. This villain's attacks gain piercing. And then, when defeated, remove the present future war from the game, which is the side scheme that's tied to Scarlet Centurion.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the phase, join another game area.
Yeah.
So I imagine there are 4 different versions of Kang to tie with 4 players.
And 4 different side schemes too. Yeah, that was a lot of fun just delving into the lore of Kang. He's been around a long time in the comics, so there was a lot to pull from. So we had a lot of fun just trying to do really... just like thematic things with which version of Kang paired with which side scheme and kind of what they're each up to.
Yeah.
Like one of my favorites is like Rama Tut. I don't think we have his card ready today, but just, he played the role of an Egyptian pharaoh for a while. He just thought it'd be cool to go back in time and be an Egyptian pharaoh. And so like his side scheme is just beautiful. You got these great big pyramids and stuff. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to do that.
That's super cool. That's super cool. So how did you approach like making each version of Kang feel distinct to the character while also keeping them unique from each other?
Yeah, so one of the things that was hard in that sense is that, as you read with Scarlet Centurion, a good portion of his text box is going to be taken up with that necessary when defeated, link up. So that doesn't leave us a whole lot of room to differentiate between the text boxes.
Yeah.
So we try to do things, that are real easy. Like you can see Scarlet Centurion, 0 scheme, 3 attack. He's clearly an aggressive version.
Right.
Where he's more about just trying to beat you down. Whereas Rama Tut is a little more balanced, I think. And then there's another version of Mortis who's more of a schemer. So he's got like higher scheme and less attack. And each one has like a slightly unique ability, right? So that was something we tried to delve into again, which version we felt was appropriate. Like my understanding of Scarlet Centurion is that he's pretty much a fighter,
right? And
so that's why he got the stats he did. And we try to do something appropriately similar with each version.
And you don't get to choose which version you get, right?
Okay, it's random. I mean, for people playing at home, I guess if you really want to, you could just choose.
Right,
but
it's your game.
The scenarios, the instructions are that you mix them up and pass them out random.
That's awesome. So then once the players finally do all reunite with each other, what kind of lies in store for them as they go into the final stretch here?
Yeah, so obviously the scenario is built that's the climax, right? Like you have this really exciting moment where you're separated and hopefully creates some good tension where some players find themselves in a tight spot where I'm like, oh, will I be able to pull this off? One of the dangers at that stage is that if well, first of all, if you're defeated, that's really bad. You don't want to get defeated at stage 3 when you're separated out, because that's going to come back and punish the rest of the group later too.
Sure.
So it's probably better if you're worried about being defeated. We actually wrote this in the rules, a little pro tip. Like, if you're worried that you're going to get KO'd, just flip back to Alter Ego, and Kang will finish out his scheme. And by completing his scheme, you'll be forced to join up with another player too. So you're never just stuck. The game never just grinds to a halt. But there is a consequence. So in the scenario kit, there's this side scheme. I think it's called Kang's Dominion.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this really cool picture of his spaceship. Looks like a giant sword and everything.
Right.
Basically, there's 4 of these set aside, and you really don't want them in the encounter deck. But if Kang is allowed to complete his scheme at stage 3, then these get added in later.
Yep.
And that makes the final version of Kang that much harder to defeat. I think each one says like he can't take damage or something. Like, it's just kind of like, oh no, this is going to be hard. So yeah, it should create for some great moments of teamwork of like, oh my gosh, I need to get over and help you quick or we're going to get a Kang's Dominion later.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, let's read some more cards here.
Sure.
So I'm going to read Depowered here. So this is an obligation that comes out of Kang's deck, actually. It's got the temporal trait. It says you cannot play hero-specific cards. Alter Ego action, discard a hero-specific card from your hand, discard this obligation. And do you want to read Time Travel Hijinks?
So I just had to laugh out loud because I haven't looked at some of these cards in a while. And so like that was like, you say you cannot play hero-specific cards. I'm like, oh, I'm a jerk. That's just me. Like, that's ouch. Yeah, okay, then Time Travel Hijinks is another obligation with a temporal trait. It says, when revealed, discard the highest cost card you control. Then place it face down under this card. Then you have Alter Ego action. Discard an energy resource from your hand to discard this obligation.
So as we see here, like this pack, there are more besides just these. This pack actually introduces a ton of obligations that come as part of the encounter deck and aren't explicitly tied to a hero.
Right.
But like those hero-specific obligations, they still require the hero to take these actions in Alter Ego form to kind of take care of that. And with that balance between hero and Alter Ego being one of the most important parts of Marvel Champions, how do you expect these obligations to push players to discover new strategies?
Yeah, obligations are really meant to disrupt the player tempo. Right now, I think players who have been playing a lot and really getting into the game have found like they can build up to a pretty good board state where they feel very confident and they can just kind of take whatever the villain throws at them. But when you're forced to switch to Alter Ego form to deal with a problem, that suddenly creates a bunch of new problems where now the villain is scheming and moving closer to their end goal. And so that's something that Boggs and I talked about. We really wanted to push more, is more reasons to get the players to flip back to Alter Ego form, more ways to disrupt that momentum that they're building. And here we saw a really thematic, kind of fun way to do it. These obligations kind of represent that Kang is like going back in time and like screwing with your past.
Yeah.
To be like, Captain America never got his superpowers. So over here in the future, Captain America's in the middle of a fight, and all of a sudden he's like, I lost my superpowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And kind of playing more into that, there are other cards that support this as well. So I'll read Corrupted Time Stream here. So this is a side scheme that can pop out. It starts with 2 thread on it. It says players cannot trigger Alter Ego action abilities on obligations. When revealed, each player must discard one random card from hand or place 2 threat here. And then you want to read Past Machinations.
Seriously, I was trying to like get caught up on this. I've been so busy on other things. Like I forget that side scheme is so mean.
Yeah, it's so gross.
I want to throw Matt Newman under the bus on that one though, because he was like playing it with me and reviewing it and going, yeah, I really like your theme on obligations. I feel like you need something really tied together though. So we kind of came up with that side scheme together. And so if you guys get mad, you just blame Matt for that one. Okay?
Yeah, just blame Matt.
That one's not I'm nice, Matt. I'm just kidding. All right, what am I reading?
Past Machinations.
Past Machinations. Yes, this is a treachery. It has the Incite 1 keyword, so anytime you reveal a card with Incite 1, you're going to place 1 threat on the main scheme. And then it has a when revealed. Each player searches the encounter deck and discard pile for a different obligation and reveals it. Shuffle the encounter deck. So this is to put your mind at ease, is a 1-of in the deck.
Sure.
That'd just be brutal if there's more.
Yeah.
But this one, as we were playtesting, we found there were times where people just didn't have obligations, and so some of the stuff that Kang was trying to do just wasn't landing quite well. So we came up with this treachery, just kind of help make sure those are getting out there, and it worked.
Yeah. So speaking of that, so Kang has a full encounter deck that has got minions and side schemes and treacheries, of course, but there's a special emphasis placed on the obligation cards. So what made obligations the place you wanted to focus on with the scenario, and how do they capture Kang's identity?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because early on there was a totally different version of the scenario that was it was honestly just a little too complicated. I sat down and played it with Boggs, and he gave some really good feedback where he said, like, I feel like you have 2 really good hooks and you only need 1. Like 2 was too much, right? And so we kind of scaled it back. One of those hooks had to do with like a separate like obligation deck, and like that's something like maybe we'll use later, like that's a really cool idea, but we decided to focus on the fact we're splitting up the players. So we took the idea of obligations though and then just integrated it right into the encounter deck.
Yeah. So
it was more streamlined and it was less overhead. And so kind of tying back to what we said before, just obligations are a great way to disrupt player momentum and also really highlight the alter ego aspect of the game, where it becomes necessary to counter what Kang is doing, to kind of step back from the fight for a minute and go and deal with these time travel hijinks and figure out who is the real Tony Stark.
Yeah. So we've shown a lot of pretty good cards. You've been commenting on that. How would you rate like the difficulty of the scenario overall, especially as compared to other scenarios?
I'm notoriously bad at this. Lord of the Rings players will just laugh, maniacally when I'm asked to assign difficulty. It's tough. Like I thought Wrecking Crew was pretty tough. When we did that in testing, everybody's like, yeah, it's at a really good place. It's really tough, especially if you play expert. Now I'm getting feedback that's like, it's really easy. I beat on the first try. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what they're doing that I wasn't. So I'm a little hesitant. Sure. We definitely, if you're playing, it was basically we designed standard with the idea that people should be able to show up with a pre-built deck. You just buy one of our packs, sit down with your friends and play, and you should feel like you have a really good shot. Not necessarily guaranteed you're going to win, but you should feel like, hey, I was in it the whole way. Whereas we build expert mode more for people who are building their custom decks, for people who are actually into games that they like to customize and build the most streamlined, strong deck they can. I encourage those players to just skip standard and go right to expert. Expert's really for you if you're the kind of person who likes to customize a lot. Then if you think you're really awesome, then you go for heroic mode. Right. That'll definitely give you a better challenge. So in terms of actual difficulty, I hesitate to say.
Yeah. All right, that's awesome. Do you want to read the Tyrannosaurus Rex?
Yeah! I was glad you chose this guy. So the T-Rex is a minion with 0 scheme, fittingly, 3 attack, 6 hit points as the creature and temporal trait. It also has the toughness keyword, so it enters play with a tough status card. And then Tyrannosaurus Rex attacks gain piercing. So this is another keyword I don't know if everyone's familiar with, but when someone with piercing attacks, it discards any tough status card from the defender before the attack is resolved. So you're not going to be able to hide from a T-Rex behind a tough status card. It's going to just gobble that up. Yeah. So how much fun was it to design Tyrannosaurus Rex as a minion in Marvel Champions? It was a lot of fun. I actually just got done reading, there was an Inhumans story arc. It was a comic that I bought where Kang is doing all kinds of time travel stuff, and I believe he just pulled a T-Rex out of time and like dropped it on the heroes in the story. I think that was the one, and I was just like, oh man, I want to do that. Like I just got to throw a T-Rex in there. Like, tell me what kid is playing the game and isn't just gonna smile when a T-Rex hits the table.
Oh, for sure.
Or when Captain America or Spider-Man punches out a T-Rex.
So this card is part of the temporal modular encounter set, which is one of 3 new encounter sets that are introduced in the scenario pack. What do you expect these encounter sets to bring to other scenarios outside of Once and Future Kang?
Yeah, well, like with this temporal one, this is a pretty straightforward one. When we're doing like designing the set, like again, we're trying to keep that scaling difficulty in mind. So the temporal set is really for your standard play. Yeah. This is also in the rules. There's a little blurb about, hey, if you want to try harder difficulty. So this one's pretty straightforward. It's just really flavorful, just like random things kind of stuffed together through time.
T-Rex.
Yeah, a lot of minion focus, just weird stuff. Then I delved a little deeper into Kang lore to come up with the Anachronaut set, which is like just crazy. These guys are just crazy, and I saw an opportunity there to make some really memorable minions and really up the difficulty a bit. So if you're looking for more of a challenge, you can take the Anachronauts and throw them into any scenario that you want and just be like, oh man, Kang is here to try to screw with me, sent his Anachronauts after me. And then the last one was we actually included a Kang encounter set, and that's where we got the confusion with Master of Time. Right. That's his subtitle. Right. But that's the thing with this scenario is normally you can't have 2 Kangs and play at the same time, but because they all have different subtitles, they're technically different characters, and that's also part of the Marvel lore that made it really interesting. So you can have Kang the Conqueror and Kang Master of Time both in play at the same time. Yeah.
So we can throw up Kang Master of Time, the villain now, or the minion, I'm sorry. So this is the first time that we've seen a villain from a scenario make their appearance in a modular encounter set. What went into making the decision to feature Kang in this way? And were you trying to capture like the same feel as Kang in the scenario, or did you want to hit something different here?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Yeah. It was sort of like the decision to do a Kang encounter set actually kind of came late in the process. The Anachronauts and the temporal stuff we knew we wanted to do, and then later on we saw an opportunity to do something fun by adding a Kang set. And that again, that kind of came out of the fact that you couldn't do that in other like Green Goblin sets, because Green Goblin didn't have subtitles in different versions, so they wouldn't work. It'd be weird to release a minion set in a scenario where you couldn't play it. Right. But here we saw, no, you actually could. It's thematic, it's fun. And so we thought, well, if we're going to do that, then he should really feel like he works toward what Kang is doing. So his kit has some more obligations, really up the chances of you encountering those. But then also, because he has that unique obligation feel, if you pull him out of this scenario and drop him in another scenario, he's going to bring those obligations to another scenario where it's really going to change how that scenario plays.
Interesting. So, having played this scenario, do you have a particular hero or strategy that you enjoy the most when you're playing this?
Well, I always like Cap.
Yeah.
Cap's good for any event. No, I don't think there's any particular hero that you need to play against Kang. Like, most of our scenarios that we design are really meant to be open to everyone. There's got to be an avenue for success with every hero. I'm sure some ultimately will pair better than others, but we pretty much used all the heroes that we figure will be available to players at the time that they get the pack to make sure that all those heroes are fun to play with.
Cool. So that is all the cards that we had to share with. There are a number of questions here in the chat that we can take before we end here. A couple of people have been asking about obligations and how these obligations seem to stay in play, whereas previously they have an effect and they're discarded. And they're just, I guess, wondering about kind of the rules behind that. How does that work now? What's the
I honestly didn't realize how we had created confusion with the core obligation design until it hit the public, and then everyone started to wonder, like, why does this obligation stay in play? Because we had more or less trained our audience to discard obligations. And that wasn't necessarily an intention. It was more just like that's how those obligations work. So I get where the question comes from. It's totally valid, because every single obligation in the core set works pretty much the same way, right? Where it's like either do this or this and then discard this obligation. But they're only discarded because the text actually says to discard them. Obligations themselves is a card type. don't automatically get discarded. We just unfortunately kind of trained our audience to do that.
Yeah.
So we own that, and I'm glad to clarify that obligation as a card type will remain in play unless it's told to do otherwise. So actually, I think Doctor Strange's obligation.
Yeah.
I think that pack just dropped recently, and people are noticing that one does not just go away. That's another one that sits out there, and you kind of have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really what I enjoy about the obligation type is that it's not a minion that you can punch and make it go away. It's not a side scheme that you can just thwart. Whatever it is, you have to deal with what it tells you to do.
Right.
And so that gives, as a designer, that gives us a lot of freedom to do some pretty zany things.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So speaking of Doctor Strange, I've seen a number of people talking about how to them Doctor Strange seems overpowered. And so I wonder if you want to comment on that, or more generally perhaps on the power level of hero packs and how they balance against each other.
Yeah, it's always interesting, when stuff gets out to the public, you get all this feedback that you hadn't got before. So just put everyone's mind at rest. We play tested Doctor Strange and Thor and all the other heroes in that first wave a ton.
Yeah.
And the feedback was all positive on all of them, and there was there was no feedback at any point that was like, this one is clearly way better than this one.
Right.
In fact, I was totally floored when Thor came out and people were just like, he feels weak. Because I thought, okay, everyone was like arguing over who got to play Thor in playtesting. And I think what I'm learning is really that different heroes just fit people's play styles better, one or the other. And so for one player who finds Thor challenging, they might find Doctor Strange very powerful. When in reality, both heroes are incredibly powerful, and it just depends on how you pilot them. So like when I play Thor, I'm like, this dude's really strong. Like we actually had to scale him back a little bit. And don't worry, we didn't scale him back too much. Like we kept playing him after that. Because Thor, like, he's got a hand size of 4, and he has this ability to draw 2 cards when you engage a minion. Well, when you're playing and you're engaging lots of minions, that's an average of 6 cards every turn, which is more than the average. And then if you're playing clever with Defender of 9 Realms or Get Over Here or the other cards we put in his kit, you might actually have 8 cards on average, which is just insane. And you can do a lot with that. But what I think, the power level is really, it's in the eye of the beholder, right? It really is like, so it is kind of fun to follow those conversations online, because I've read a lot of that too. I've read a lot of the comments about Doctor Strange just being way too good, and like, yeah, he's good, no doubt. Like some of his cards are really, really effective, like Cloak of Levitation, just exhaust to ready him. Like Master Mystic Arts, you just get an extra card in hero form. Like he's a powerful dude in the Marvel Universe, so we definitely wanted to feel that. But in all the playtesting we did, he never felt out of place, like stronger than everyone else. He still struggled against the same scenarios that Captain America struggled against. It just depended on the specific matchup and who was piloting them, and the luck of the draw. Yeah. So I just encourage people, if they find that they're frustrated with one or other, that's something that we're sorry to hear. Like we definitely take that feedback, and we're not offended by it. Like that's your experience, and we want you to know, like, we're listening and we're trying to do everything we can, and we also just want to encourage you, like, consider how you're piloting them too. And think about, like, maybe you looked at Defender of 9 Realms and went, why would I want to engage a minion on my turn? That sounds terrible. Try it once, because you might be surprised with the results. You get a minion, you remove 3 threat, you draw 2 cards, and suddenly you're on fire. It feels really good. So yeah.
All right. A question about Once and Future Kang. Where was it? I want to read it. What were the comic series that most influenced your design for this pack?
Yeah, okay, so I mentioned the Inhumans. That was a recent storyline. Recent for me means within like the last 5 years or so. Then the Young Avengers. That was a comic that I got into not too long ago. Like the original, like Kang featured very heavily. Like it was Iron Lad was like pulling this team together, and then it's revealed that Iron Lad is actually like a young version of Kang, who's come back in time to escape his future self, and then like OG Kang shows up, and like it's really convoluted and really entertaining. So I know the Once and Future Kang is actually a title of a real story from Marvel, and I confess I have not read it. I just really like it.
It's a great title. It's so good.
I thought it's really a fun title. Yeah, it just captures the quirkiness of it.
And then a final question here. How is art picked for the cards, and what artwork from the comics are you able to use?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. So Marvel actually gave us access to like a private database. Like there is a process to log in that's pretty strict. It's pretty secure. You know, it's cool. So we are allowed to pull from that. Like I can just go on there and type in Kang, and whatever pops up has been pre-approved. So that's real handy. That's like usually our first stop, right? Mm-hmm. Like before we even order art. If we're doing things properly, we have time to go on, have a look around, see how much is available. That gives us a good idea for how much we still need to find. Yeah. Then we have 2 other options open to us. So there's a total like 3 ways we can get art. The first one, like I said, is that private database. The second is, of course, we can commission new art. We can always just, as a studio, write art briefs. And so we, you know, when we're crafting a new scenario, we have our own story we want to tell. That's usually where we get a lot of the villain and scheme art from, and then other stuff that we're not sure that we can find. And then lastly, we can actually work with someone who goes just through like Marvel Comics online, and just kind of freelance is like helping us to identify, here's some good art pieces that could work. We collect all those and we send them off to Marvel, and we ask them to please send us high-res versions, and then so yeah, you get a mixture of all 3 of those things in the final product.
Awesome. Well, I've had a great time sitting down and talking with you. It looks like the chat's been having a good time too. So thank you guys so much for watching. So this is Once and Future Kang. It's a scenario pack, as we mentioned. It's going to be $19.95, like all the scenario packs. It's going to come out in October, is where it's currently scheduled for release. So a month after Rise of Red Skull in September.
Yeah, wow, Marvel's about to explode. We're going to go from what we have right now, like 6 playable scenarios. Because Goblin comes with 2,
Wrecking Crew.
3 in the chorus at Wrecking Crew, and then we're about to double that in short order with 5 in Red Skull and plus Kang. Yeah, it's going to be good. It's pretty exciting. And then there's, you know, more heroes that we'll be announcing in the future, all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah. I've seen you guys asking about OP stuff. We don't have any OP news to share at this point, but I know that they're working on a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. Obviously, I had a talk with them yesterday.
Obviously, there are limits on what they can currently do with the current situation, but they're making plans for as soon as it's safe to reopen in different parts of the country and the world. So that is all we have for today. Do you have anything final that you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, man. Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He wears a mask to protect others.
That's right.
Wear your mask, please.
Please do.
It's not just for you.
We're not wearing ours, so you can hear us speak clearly.
Yeah.
But we are very far apart.
It's right here.
Yeah. In my pocket.
It's going back on when we're done.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching. Thanks to Carolina Game Tables, who provided this lovely table that keeps us a safe 6 feet apart. Thank you for watching. Follow us on all our social media channels. There will be an article going up, not today because of some approvals, but at some point shortly. I hope next week we will have an article going up for Once Future Kang, and you'll be able to see some new cards there. So we'll see you guys next time.